Hey guys, and welcome to episode 175 of Meeple to Meeple. Can you believe it? 175. It's a big one. Today, I am joined by Mike Stone, who's known in the board gaming community as the Korean Meeple. Mike has built a following by sharing his passion for board games, and his journey highlights how board games can bring people together, regardless of cultural heritage or geography. He loves order and structure, and I have tested his flexibility with my improvisational style. He has made it his goal to find the best in every board game, and that's a lot of playtime. So, we're going to talk about his gaming origins, content creation, favorite experiences in the hobby, and the people who have helped shape his journey along the way. Grab your favorite beverage and settle in and join me as we get to know the Korean meeple. Mike, thanks for joining. How are you?
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. This is exciting. You are the first guest that did not reach out to me, but multiple previous guests told me I needed to have you on the show.
Oh, well, that's an honor. That's a big honor.
So yeah, so let's go ahead and dive right in. Tell me, what was the first board game that you ever played as a kid?
I mean, as a kid, I went down through the usual tropes, right? We played Scrabble and Sorry and Monopoly and that type of stuff. Honestly, I think the first board game I ever played was probably checkers or chess. Both my parents played those games, and so that was kind of a bonding moment. But yeah, that was probably the first board game I ever played. And then I didn't really get started in the hobby world until high school, but I'm sure we'll
Okay.
get more.
Yeah. So where did you grow up?
So I was originally born in Korea and I was adopted and came over here to Michigan, and that's still where I live to this day. But I came over here when I was an infant. So, like, I don't really remember a lot about Korea. I don't speak Korean fluently. I tell people I'm pretty much an American. I'm the whitest Asian they'll probably find, but nonetheless, my parents did a really good job supporting my roots and showing me where I grew up or was born and teaching me about the Korean heritage and stuff like that. So like it's still part of me, even though, like I said, most of my life, majority of my life, I've been here in the States.
Yeah. And that your family, they play a lot of board games with you as a kid and introduce you to all the classics, or was that something
They
you did with your
did,
friends separate from? Okay.
yeah, yeah. So they did. I think it was, it was just one of those bonding moments. We didn't have the video games, the TV like we do nowadays, right? Like
Right.
it was a
Yep.
lot more scarce back then. So we did what we had to, and we played what we could. It was a good time. My parents were huge on reading and stuff like that too. So like they supported a lot of that, and so, but I think it was just things to keep your brain busy that wasn't a screen, right? Kind of like parents nowadays. And so board games, reading, outside, go eat some dirt and stuff like that. That was a big thing around my household. So a lot of that type of stuff. But like I said, board games are definitely a part of that. I will say my family doesn't do it as much anymore,
Okay.
but I still kind of took that passion and ran with it.
Right. Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic. I had a similar experience growing up too. It was all the classics,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Yep, yep. Eating dirt in Southern Louisiana. Yeah.
There you go.
Yep. Oh yeah, yeah. But I hear the dirt in Michigan is richer and a little bit tasty.
Where I am is a lot of clay, and so
Is it?
it's a little chewier, I guess, if
Okay.
anything.
Where in Michigan? I don't want to assume Detroit, so
But actually, I'm on the opposite of Detroit. So Detroit is on the east side, and I'm on the west side, southwest side, around the
okay.
Grand Rapids area. I'm maybe about half hour, 45 minutes from Lake Michigan, the beach.
Okay.
So
Okay. I am vaguely familiar with that area, just a little bit.
perfect.
I've only been to Michigan once. So for anyone who doesn't know you, which by the way, I don't believe that that's true, because when you look at your follower count and your content, everybody knows the Korean meeple. But just in case I have a listener who doesn't know who you are,
Of course.
how did you first discover the modern board gaming hobby? And what sparked your passion?
So I think I think like a lot of people, it started for me in high school. I know a lot of people have a college experience with Catan and Cards Against Humanity and Apples to Apples stuff, but for me, it was high school. Like we played Magic and we played Pokemon, the actual card game back in the day when it first came out. And so like it just kind of took that passion and we ran with it. And we found Catan, I found Munchkin, found D&D. You know, D&D's been around forever. And so
Ever.
I
Yes.
started doing a lot of RPG stuff too, and then it just kind of bloomed from there, you know. And yeah, I mean, yeah, I would say it started with the TCGs and the LCG or the CCGs, and then kind of went to Catan, and then went to Munchkin. The first game I ever bought hobby wise was a game called Killer Bunnies from Playroom Entertainment.
My God, I haven't thought about killer bunnies in
I
years.
know a lot of people haven't, and like I thought it was so cool. So with a background in like Magic and stuff like that, I had to buy every expansion, of course.
Of course.
So I made it my goal to buy all the colors. So for those that don't know, all the expansions are colors. I didn't even tell you all the colors, but yellow, red, blue, blah blah blah. And we loved that game. We loved that game because it was so random and goofy and funny. Like I said, because we played Munchkin and stuff like that, we were used to the randomness. We loved that, and beating up on your friends and stuff like that is always fun. And so, but yeah, about Killer Bunnies, I don't have it anymore. I got rid of all of it, but
Well, you
you know,
did. Okay.
you still see it now and then. You know, on consignment or something like that, or you know, in the bargain bins. But yeah, it's been a long time since I played it.
That was going to be my next question is if you still had it, but apparently not. I still have my 1997 edition of Catan. Back then it was Settlers of Catan, right? And all the expansions to go with it. But those boxes stack up really
Oh
high
yeah.
and
Mhm.
you're trying to transport them. So we've got like a plastic bin that we just cram everything
Oh
into.
yeah.
Can't say I played it in probably 10 years, but I can't part with it, just for nostalgia's sake. And I was wondering, and my question would have been, is Killer Bunnies the same for you? But apparently not. Apparently there's no room for nostalgia in Mike's world.
No, but I do have my second board game. Unfortunately, it's not behind me in the shelf, but the second board game that I bought was a game that came out from Fantasy Flight. It was a Fantasy Flight and Iron Games combination, but or Dust. Dust was the other company that helped support it. But it was a game called The Adventurers. So they made a second edition with Egyptian pyramids, but this was the original one where you're going to this Mayan type temple. And it was a lot of randomness again. And you played this adventure and you moved around this board with a miniature and you did all these different Indiana Jones type tasks. You know, there's a lava pit and there was a giant boulder that was rolling behind you and stuff like that. And that was the second game that I remember buying. And I saved up some money for that because, you know, games were still expensive back then, you know, for even with the way they were. But I thought that game was so cool because of all the cool things in it and all the bits and bobs and everything else. But I remember that was the second game I bought, and then it blew up from there.
Do you have a favorite game of all time?
So that's a loaded question for me. So
Okay.
as a quick background, I probably, if you wanted to count every game I've ever owned, now I go through and get rid of some and get new ones, right? But if I keep a rough count in my head, and I've probably owned 4 to 5 thousand board games throughout
Sure.
my life.
Sure.
And I still have probably about 2,000 of them right now in my house. So I keep a pretty hefty collection in comparison to some, but there's a whole story behind that. But as far as a favorite board game, one that's always stuck around was Trajan. I love Trajan by Stefan Feld. I still have the original printing of that, and that's a nostalgic thing. So the reason I'll give a quick story. The reason I keep that is because that is the first Euro-ish type game that clicked. Like
Okay.
I always, I talk to a few other people, and like we all have a board game in our collection that was heavy, had heavy mechanics, or had a lot of moving pieces. And there's something about that game, the way it meshed, that made your brain click. Right? It's just a magic moment. I keep that around for that purpose. Is it my favorite, absolute favorite of all time? No, but I will never ever get rid of that game because of that moment. Similarly, I kept Zolkin, the Mayan calendar. I like that game a lot. Don't get me wrong, but that was my wife's first game that made it click in her head.
Okay.
So watching that magic moment is just it's undescribable to me. So I would say Trading's up there, but like I love Clinic. Clinic is actually probably one of my favorite games. And then Terra Mystica, the original Terra Mystica, Age of
Sure.
Innovation, and all Gaia Project are great, but Terra Mystica is fantastic. I love Terra Mystica. And then Hegemony. Hegemony is
Sure.
also up. And that just
Yep.
came out. That tells you for me the merit of that game. That I love that game so much. And
So
then last but not oh, go ahead.
if we were to do a top 10, all the games you listed, would those go in your top 10? Or are they more
Those
like nostalgia feeling kind of, they have their special category?
sure, sure. I don't think Zolkin would be in my top 10. It'd probably be in my top 20, but for sure Clinic. And I don't know the order per se, but I would say Clinic, Terra Mystica, Hegemony, Suburbia. Suburbia is a fantastic game too. And Trajan are definitely in those top five. Like I
Okay.
said, to what order I don't know. And then I'd have to think about the other five. But like a lot of gamers, games come and go so often. The ones that stay in my collection, you know, they stay for a reason, right?
Right. Right. Absolutely. My wife and I are so pragmatic about our collection and trying to keep it as lean as possible. And I talk about it a lot on the show. But I mean, you just mentioned two really fantastic games that both of which I have sold, right? Because Trajan, while, for some reason, Trajan should have clicked more because it's Roman history. Both my wife and I studied ancient Roman history, so we gravitated toward the theme. The gameplay was stunning. Stefan Feld just, magic almost all the time, but it wasn't hitting our table, and so we cut it. And then over the weekend for the 4th anniversary bonus episode with Gareth, we talked about Solkin, the Mayan calendar, which was one of Gareth's top 4 of all time. I sold it, and we talked about that in quite detail. That rule book is just it's a bear. It's
Boy, it is.
it's difficult, and so if you don't play Tzolk'in regularly enough, that
Hmm.
rules refresh is really burdensome, and therefore it's difficult to hit the table. So, but those are really good titles. Yeah, I dig that. 2000, man, that's a story for another day. I'll have to
Sure,
ask you about that at Origins and find out
for
about
sure.
how you curate your collection. But I want to talk, your content it's been really fun and has a really natural vibe, right?
Thank you.
What inspired you, aside from the fact that you were born Korean? And if that's the reason, then that's fine. But what inspired you to build your brand around the Korean people? Was there something else?
So it goes way back to honestly my friend group back in high school and stuff. Like I was, and this isn't to degrade or anything like that, but I was the minority. All my friends in this part of Michigan were white and Dutch and Caucasian, and like I was a minority, and so like I became the Korean guy, kind of, you know, and I was fine with that because it wasn't meant to be anything negative. It was just that was just who I was. And it kind of evolved from there. So when I started really getting into board games, I was like, oh, I need a fun username, stuff like that, And so I kind of played around with this and that, and eventually I just stuck to the Korean Meeple. And so that was my board game my BGG handle for a while, and probably a screen name, honestly, too, back
Yeah.
on AIM days or Yahoo Messenger days. And then, it just kinda stuck with that, and I've always been that. I've had the email for a long time, and, yeah, and that's just been a thing, and so when I started the Instagram journey, I was just like, "You know what? I'm just gonna stick with it. I got the email, I've got the username, I've got all this stuff already set up around it. Let's see if it's available," and luckily it was. So that's kind of the background of it.
But I like that you took your status as a minority in growing up, right?
Sure. Mhm.
And you owned it, made it your own,
Yep.
and just I really like that. We try to inspire people to own our identities and things and just run with it. So I really enjoy that
Well, thank
story.
you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I didn't want to assume that it was just the obvious. Well, he's Korean, I didn't.
It kind of is, but the
Yeah,
funny thing is, as a side thing, I get so many people on this platform that are like, "Where's some good places in Korea?" And I'm just like, I don't know, you know, or what's a good Korean game, and I'm just like, I don't know. I'm sorry, So like my username is kind of a double-edged sword, right? In that regard,
yeah,
where people are like, oh, he
sure,
must live in Korea. He must know what he's talking about. I'm just like,
of course.
no, sorry. So
Hey, so I'm thinking about UK Games Expo just recently concluded this past weekend, and I've seen some of the posts that folks have been sharing. They've really shared a lot about Sasi and Shashi's games, which are out of Japan, and are really starting to take over the hobby in the Western market, which is
mhm.
fantastic. Which begs the question: are there any Korean publishers, companies, games that you know of that exist right now? Is there
Yeah,
much of a market?
so there are, well, give me a second. I will pull one off the shelf.
All right.
Most people know Platy. Platy is out of Korea. So
Okay.
I'm 99% sure they're out of Korea. But this is probably one of the only Korean publishers that I talk to personally for content and stuff like that. I've talked to some of the Japanese companies. I've talked to a few Vietnamese ones. But yeah, as far as Korean straight, yeah, mainly just Platy. But yeah, I'm sure there's a lot. But I also found in my experience that a lot of manufacturers, as you know, are in Asia, but not as many
Right.
publishers. So
Right. That that's true. That is very true. I'm always on the lookout for non-Western publishers and designers. Yeah. Just for variety, right? Like I've said it countless times on this show about if we're going to have unity, we have to embrace diversity. And while that's true for
100%.
the community, it's also true for the business side of this hobby. It's also true for just the industry as a whole. So I'd love to try to feature more international or global is not the right word, but non-Western. I've had a few.
Yep. Oh
Um,
yeah,
I'm always on the lookout. So if you meet anybody, send them my way. I'd love to
will
talk to
do.
them because that would
Definitely.
be really great to feature them. So let me ask you, what is something that people outside of the hobby that you have found just completely misunderstand about us as gamers and this entire hobby?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is the traditional thing you hear about people thinking that our board games are different variations of Monopoly and different variations of Uno and stuff like that. And then, I grew up in a different time too, right? Like right now, we're embracing what I'm gonna call the nerd culture and the geek culture, right? Because that's just what it is. But back when I was a teenager, that wasn't the case, and I'm sure you can attest to that too, Peter. Like,
Preach,
yeah.
preach.
And
Geek
so,
was anything but chic back in the day.
exactly, we weren't cool, right?
No,
We weren't cool. And so I think that's the other stereotype that we still deal with, especially with people, I'm older, right? I'm not a young guy anymore. So like I still deal with that with my peers, right? Like, oh, you play board games like Monopoly, or that's kind of weird and geeky or dirty, you know. And so I still deal with that on a regular basis. So I think that those are the two stereotypes that are true. Are true. People still think that we are geeks and nerds and we're not cool and stuff like that, or that we just play Monopoly and Uno and Scrabble, right?
yeah,
And then that's something that I love proving people wrong about, if you will. I love being like, okay, let me show you some other games that we play. You know, uh, I love teaching. I love it. I love expanding people's minds to this hobby because this hobby has so much to offer. Whether you love word games or you love, tile laying games or you love poker. If you love poker, I've got a bunch of games that you can play that you'll love. So I love expanding people's horizons to accept the fact that board games have evolved so much and changed, and the fact that they're fun. That's cool to use your brain for more than just work. You know.
right? Yeah. No. I really like that. One of your tagline on Instagram is that, and I mentioned it a little bit in the intro, is that you look for the best in every board game. How do you do that?
So this is a long story, so I'm gonna give you just the quick
Okay.
version of it. But so when I was younger and really getting into the hobby, so like I said, this was high school or college years, right?
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of money. Well, one of the local game stores in my area had a consignment area where people would bring in games to sell them. Well, those games were usually the games no one wanted, right? They were the cheap games that no one wanted for whatever reason. And there was a lot of them. So I bought those games because they were cheap and I was in the hobby and I had to consume. So I would buy those games and they weren't, I'll be the first to admit, a lot of them weren't good. They weren't great. I, once again, being new to the hobby and not knowing everything, I took a risk, you know, and in that journey, I found that some of these games that people threw by the wayside or people overlook are actually fantastic. And they are brilliant designs, brilliant games. And some of them I love still to this day. And so when I started, yeah, growing up and having more money, I would always go like on websites. I'd always go to the clearance sections. That would be like, what are people not buying? That, maybe I'm missing. Maybe I overlook too. And so nowadays I still do that, but I'll do some research and watch some videos, read the rule books online about the games, and I still pick up a lot of those clearance games because those clearance games were overlooked for some reason, but they're still a good game there sometimes. And so long story short, I'm always trying to find the best in every game because I think every game deserves a play. Even if it's not for you, you should at least try it because you never
Yeah.
know. We're
Absolutely.
so focused on the new hotness and we're so focused on the
Hmm.
wingspans and even the Catans or the Ticket to Rides or whatever it may be. We're focused on these bright, big, shiny titles that have a big following, and that's great. They're fantastic games, but that makes us forget about some of these smaller games. And I've talked about this on my live streams too. Every designer made a game for a reason. They had an idea or a passion behind that game, and they put sometimes everything they have into it. And if it flops, it flops. But I want to see what they saw. I want to figure out what passion they put behind this because you and I both know that a lot of these designers just don't make a game willy nilly. You know,
Right.
they put
Right.
a lot of time and effort, and I want to see what that time and effort is. I want to see it from their perspective in a roundabout way, and figure out why they made this game. And so, I think every game deserves a play, even if it's not a great game or the art's terrible or the components suck. Yeah, those are factors, but at the end of the day, there's still a game there. You still get to play and have fun with your friends, and it's an experience.
Man, that is fantastic. I just realized that. So you and I are the perfect partners. While you're looking for the best in every game, I'm looking for the best in every gamer,
There you go. That is
right?
perfect.
That is exactly why I do this, right? It's
Sure.
to see the best, or if not look for, bring it out in everyone
Mhm.
for these moments right here, right now. That's just that is so beautiful. Thank you for that story.
You're welcome.
I had no idea where that was going to go, and that was incredible. I love that you do that. I like going to the clearance.
Yeah.
I was thinking how there were some really great games that we have sold, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
I can tell you why we sold them. There are always practical reasons, but we also look for the clearance. I really enjoy spending time at the Origins consignment sale
But yeah.
since
Mhm.
since we're going to be at Origins. You know, Gen Con's got a huge used game sale and an auction. We have a used game sale here at our FLGS. So yeah, I definitely encourage people to give those sections a look and those consignment sales because there's some really really great gems that are just hiding and waiting to be played. And just like there's some really great gamers that I would love for, I think the challenge both ways. I think for you trying to find the game and me trying to find the gamer is that there's so many of both. right?
There is 100%,
You
100%.
you can't play every game, and I can't play with every gamer.
Right, exactly.
So what are we gonna do?
Yes, we'll just have to do more podcasts and, keep evangelizing, if you will.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's it. It's gonna be you know, preach the gospel of board games. That's how you do
Right,
it. Hey,
exactly.
so what do you and I did an entire episode on this very thing, how to talk about our hobby to non-gamers.
Mhm.
Do you have do you have like a go-to phrase or example or something when you're talking to non-gamers about our hobby, or any advice for gamers when they do encounter someone who asks them the dreaded question, "Oh, you mean Monopoly?"
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things like I try to make my conversations as organic as possible, right? So if I met you on the street and we were stuck on a bus or a taxi or something like that, and were forced to talk, right? We didn't have our phones or something like that. I would just ask you about your hobbies. And then with that, you'd ask about my hobbies. And then I'd tell you that I play board games. And then based on your hobbies, I'd say, oh, if you're like, I'm huge into football, I'd be like, oh, well, have you ever played First and Goal? Or Pizza Box Football, which is another old game. But regardless, I'd go into that kind of spiel where I would find something that has your interest already and go from and if you come back with, "Oh, like Monopoly," I'd be like, "Well, no, not really, but let me tell you some of the games that I have played based on your interests. You like video games? Well, did you know that, League of Legends, the studio made a game called Mechs versus Minions?" You know, and that's what I do with a lot of my conversations with non-gamers is I take something that I have a somewhat knowledge of. I never claim to know everything, and I find that common ground, and I will expand upon it. And I'll tell you about Mechs versus Minions. I'll tell you that's a really cool game with cooperative natures. There's a campaign going on, and there's these cool models that you put on the table, and you're doing this and that, and try to get. If I gain your interest, awesome. But if they at the end of this fake taxi ride, at the end of it, if you're not for it, that's fine too. I've
Sure.
learned in my experience too that not everyone's a gamer, not everyone's brain thinks like a gamer, right? I've met plenty of people that honestly Catan might be too much for them. They're very
Mhm.
smart people, but
Right.
the way that board gamers' minds work and the way that other people's minds work, they're not the same.
Yeah,
And that's okay.
absolutely. They're definitely not the same. I've recently run into not all gamers think the same.
Mm.
Like, I have some very good friends of mine in the hobby and have bumped up against how they approach games so differently from how I do, and they play them differently, and therefore they like different games based on that approach. One is not better or right than the other one. And sometimes I'm human, I'm a fallen creature, and I need to be reminded of that so that I don't act like a fool.
Happens to the best of us.
It does. It does. Unfortunately, it happens to me more times than I care to admit. Um, okay, you ready for a controversial question?
All right, him
What's your favorite player color?
blue.
Look at that. With confidence. With confidence. So, what do you do when you're at a table with someone who also plays blue? Are you vehemently glued to blue, or do you let them play blue, or
So the only question before that would be, are they a close friend of mine or not?
okay.
If it's a
Okay.
stranger, I will gladly let somebody else play blue. If it's a friend, I will kindly ask. If they refuse, then I'm fine. I'm a flexible guy. I'll do what I have to. But in general, I like to play blue. And as you know, probably from some of your games, I also in my head when I play blue, I know that that's my piece over there, and that's my worker over there, and that's my scoring pawn over there. And so it's ingrained in my head. So when I'm not blue, and then I move somebody else's piece on accident because they're blue, I feel terrible. But, like, it's just one of those things, so, like, it's for the best if I can just play blue, but if I can't, it's not the end of the world.
So that means that if you ever go to England, or Brian from Always Plays Blue comes here,
Mhm, yep.
A fight will ensue. No. What about shades of blue?
I like royal blue probably the
Okay.
most.
Okay.
So, and honestly, it's just a thing. Like as a kid, little kids always have their favorite color. My favorite color has always been blue. And so it just kind of stuck with me. And the other thing is, it's a primary color. So most likely, I can find it in most of our board games.
True.
You know,
That's
it's,
true.
and if it's not, then I'll take the thing closest blue. I'll take a teal. I'll even take a green if I need to. But, if given the option, I'll be blue.
Yep. It's interesting people's takes on the color. I think I really like I had this was last year now. I had Grant Lyons on, and he doesn't have a favorite player color. He'll just take whatever because he wants to avoid what you just described, right? If I'm always blue and the one time I'm not, then I end up thinking that I am blue. So he's like, I'm just whatever color you give me, and I'm not it. I'm like, I like that.
I wish I could be
Sometimes,
that way, honestly.
yeah, I am I am mostly like that, right? Like I have to play purple. But if I can't play purple, then I want to be gold or yellow. If I can't be that, I'll be green because that's the tricolors of Mardi Gras and I got to have them.
There you go.
If I can't play those colors or because someone else is playing them or they're just not available, I don't care. I wait till I just pick last. And, but it's really interesting because you can see the psychology of the individual gamers at the table by the color they're picking
What?
or if there's like a even if it's a friendly rivalry of well let me play blue or whatever, it's so revealing sometimes and
Oh,
I really
100%. I mean,
I really enjoy that.
if you go back to I don't know if you played Magic the Gathering, but
A
I mean,
long time ago, yes.
yeah. So like, well, this is before Commander and everything, like back in the old school days. But if somebody comes up with a red deck, you know what it's going to bring. Blue deck, you know
Mm-hmm.
what it's going to bring. White
Mm-hmm.
deck, so on, so on, so on.
Yep.
And so, I agree with you. I think the color kind of reveals a little bit about the player and kind of their play styles to a degree, or at least what color they like. you know, like me, I always tell people when it comes to games, I don't care if I win. I want to have fun, and I want you to have fun. So, I've had mixed reviews on that. Some people are like, "Oh, that's so nice. I'm so happy with it," and other people are like, "Oh, so you don't play? You're not playing because you're not trying to win." And I'm just like, "No, I'm playing, but I'm here for the exploration." It's the adage of, we're all on a wow, we're all on a journey, and it's not the destination that counts. It's the journey there, and that's me for games. I don't care about winning. If I win, awesome. But if I don't, it's not the end of the world. But figuring out the mechanics and the theme and interacting with the players and seeing how everything works and all that stuff. That's why I'm there for a game.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10. I don't. At the end of the day, if I lose, I lose. I've played in tournaments where I don't even care about winning. I just want to play games. So and so it's interesting to see how people take that too.
It's so true. And once again, this is a perfect partnership.
100%.
Although I will say just recently, having shared your perspective, I totally agree. I had that recently challenged. It was brought to my attention that if you don't play to win, then you break the game. And I'm like, I'm still chewing on that, but I'm like, there's something to be said about that, right? Designers design the games for you to have a good time, but at the same time, you have to win. Because there are some games where I don't play to win. I'm just like, you know, I'm going to tell a story in my head while I'm doing this thing and let everybody
Yeah.
else do
Right.
theirs. But, then you're in effect, you're negatively impacting unintentionally their experience. And I'm like, I need to think about that. Yeah. So,
But at the end of the day, ask yourself this: if you're playing with 3 new players, 4-player game, right? If you are trying your hardest, and let's say you have more experience at the table than these people, if you grind them into dust, yes, you're playing correctly, but they probably didn't have the best time doing that, right? And so, is your ultimate goal to win and play the game correctly, or is
Right.
your ultimate goal to teach people and to have a good time with them and watch them have a good time and share a positive experience, right? There's a balance in your head, but for me, I will take people over a game and winning any day.
Agreed. Completely agree. It's just that it's recently been challenged. So I've been thinking about it over the past few days, just another thing to think about, right? So let's talk about people, right? It's after all, was there a particular content creator that influenced you when you started making content?
Not really. Not really.
Okay.
So when I started, I mean, like a lot of people, I just started looking at board game content creators and seeing the reviews and stuff. And I kind of broke away from watching all the YouTube reviews because they take forever, and I can quick read a blog on somebody's game. So that's kind of what started it. So there wasn't a particular person, uh, but I mean, there's a lot of good people I've met throughout the years too.
Sure.
But like, I think it's Games with John. He's fantastic. Unexpected, or is it? I'm blanking on his name, but he also does a lot of hidden gems. It'll come to me after this video's done. So, but and that's another thing though, is how I wanted to caveat into that or transition. Excuse. I love hidden gems, as we talked about a little bit earlier. And so I always looked for those hidden gems. I would, scroll past all the popular stuff, and I'd be like, "Oh, I've never heard about this game," or "Oh, I know this game, but no one else does," you know? And so, like, I don't know. That's kind of always been my niche, and that's what got me started into the content creation thing, is bringing those hidden gems and those weird and obscure games to people, focus, you know? But, no, I wouldn't say there's one particular person in general, but there are definitely a lot of people that have stuck with me throughout the years and that I've become really good friends with and been able to talk to them about stuff. And we share a lot of common like designers and interests and mechanics.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, definitely there's someone for everyone, just like there's some game for everyone. There's the right content and there's so much variety in the content that's out there. It's always interesting to hear, particularly from folks like yourself who've been making content for such a long time. Like if you were going to be making content today, there's so much out there. Someone's going to influence you, right? And you're going to have an
Oh,
answer.
sure.
But back then there were fewer. So a lot of us had to figure it out on our own.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's what made it good for me is that people didn't know about the teams that was doing
Yeah.
content on, right?
Mm.
That, like I said, that was my niche from the beginning. And so it was easier for me to do that. So I didn't have to compare myself, right? Everyone has a wingspan review, but does everyone have a, you know, a Saint Mallow review? I'm just looking at myself, no, no. And so like I was able to kind of do my own thing, and not live in that comparison bubble, which helped me a lot with
Yeah,
making content.
sure. So, speaking of hidden gems, was there a game that you found that you thought you were absolutely going to love and you ended up hating it?
There's a lot of those. But I'll stick with some popular ones. So
Okay.
popular ones that I don't like are Wingspan. I've played it multiple times and never stuck with me. I can appreciate now, like a lot of gamers, I can appreciate a game design, right? I can see the love and the passion and the thought that was put into the game. So I appreciate the design and the mechanics and how everything flows. But you asked me to play Wingspan, I'd probably pass. Another popular one that I actually thought I would love was Lost Ruins of Arnak.
Okay.
I thought I would love that game because of what it does and the deck building and stuff like that, and
Hmm.
it did not fly with me at all. And then I'll pick a third popular one. So I love deck builders. Deck builders are great. But the
Okay.
other one that did stick with me and my group was Clank. You know, Clank. Yeah, I it fell flat for me, especially fell flat for my wife. And after that, I was just like, all right, well then it is what it is. If we're not going to get a play, there's no point in keeping it around. So but those are 3 games, very popular games that a lot of people love that
Right.
just utterly fell flat for me after multiple plays. I always give games 3 to 10 plays depending on what it is, and, after that point, then I'm like, "Okay, time to move."
When your spouse doesn't like a game either, that accelerates it going out the door
It does. It really does.
because then
100%.
it's never gonna hit the table if your wife doesn't like it.
Yep. That's exactly it. So,
I know the feeling. So how about the flip side? Was there a game that you drug your feet on, everyone was, like, talking it up, you were like, "I don't know if I'm gonna like this," and you ended up loving it?
let's see. Looking around my collection. That's a tougher one.
It
That's a
is.
much tougher one because
Uh-huh.
most of the time I keep up with a lot of the news before it becomes popular, right? All the indie stuff and all the hidden obscure stuff, that's what I'm aware of. So that question is a little bit more difficult. I would say some of the T series though. I saw a lot of hype on like Steel Tom, Tawatsui, Tabanusi, Tekken, those T series, and I dragged my feet on those for a while. Mainly because I was intimidated by them, honestly, because I was just like, hey, well, that who hasn't done an Egyptian theme or a Euro trading theme, right? I was just like, okay, I don't need more of these. But after playing them, it blew my mind away. And now there's some of my favorites in that series. But those definitely played a role into I don't know yet. And then, like I said,
Right.
but yeah, it's that one's hard. I'd have to give it a lot more thought because just off the top of my head, there's there's never a game I won't play. If you begged me right now, PJ, to play Wingspan, I would play it with you. I would play
Okay,
Arnak with you.
okay.
But if given a real choice, then I probably would pass. But yeah, there's not many games I won't play, so I'll try everything at least once. And especially if you look at some of my collection, you'll be like, "Why would you play that game?" And I'm like, "I gave it a try. You know,
Right,
have
right.
you given it a try?"
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
think that's why the question I think asking you that question has a lot of value because you are open to playing so many things, and it's always so for me, the game that I was expecting to hate it. I didn't wanna buy it, I didn't wanna play it. I thought it was gonna be big and unwieldy. It seemed like another war area control game, and then we played it, and both my wife and I loved it, and that was Scythe.
yeah.
It really surprised us. And again, connecting the spouse, she loved it so much. I played it and was like, "This is amazing. I haven't engaged in any combat, and I'm doing pretty well." And then when we walked away, she's like, "That game was fantastic." So it's like the love value increased exponentially because if the wife loves a game, you know,
Then
you better love it because
exactly, yeah, it's an opportunity to play with your wife. I will say, for the longest time, I was intimidated by train games. So your Cube Rails, your 18XX, your Steams, Age of Steams, those types of things. I was intimidated because honestly, they looked boring, and they still do, right? Let's be fair. Like, there's not many pretty versions of those types of train games. They're just a bunch of hexagons with lines drawn through them, and they put them on
Mhm.
a map.
Yep.
But that's not to say that I didn't try it, and I fell in love. So this is later in my gaming career, but I love economic games. I love like having to calculate money and having a budget and stuff like that. And so a friend of mine convinced me to play a cube rail game, and I kind of launched from there. And I just fell in love with the genre. But I mean, you and I both know when you walk past the table of a cube rail game or one of those, you're just like, meh, whatever. But because they don't look great, and they still don't look great. They don't make them looking great, but the gameplay there is so dynamic, and the player interaction plays such a heavy role. But they're
Absolutely.
not attractive. They're not
No.
attractive, and I can see why there's a small specific niche for those types of gamers. Yeah.
Yeah. GMT is a lot like, GMT games,
Yes. Yep.
especially the older games from the 70s, the 80s, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like, the game pieces were little cardboard squares with so much information on them that there was just so much administration in those
Mhm.
games that it was just too much. It was too much work trying to manage the game. And then as they moved into the 21st century, a lot of their games are just magical, but their themes and their overall game design are still. I mean, let's talk about Twilight Struggle being
Oh,
the
yeah.
number one game on Board Game Geek for a really long time before
Mhm.
Gloomhaven came along. That's one of my wife and I's favorite two-player games
That's a great game.
ever, right?
Great game.
Recently, a few years ago, they sent me Prime Minister to review. Man, that game is heavy, right? Mainly because we're Americans, so we didn't grow up in the British parliamentary system and the way that votes work. It's a lot, but again, it's a really cool theme and a lot more appealing than some of those
Mm.
older games. So, as we've been talking and we've talked about your collection, how big it has been, where it is now, the way you approach purchasing a game, like the clearance, and looking for those underrated or unknown hidden gems, as you called it. You have played a lot of games.
I have.
You have. What qualities make a game stand out for you after the play is over?
I think, well, okay, so this goes back to I don't try to win, and honestly, most of the time, I don't. But that's not to say I don't try, I mean, everyone tries to win, maybe at different levels, but, I try to win, I try to have fun, I try to explore a game. But I think the one thing, and this is we talked about World Order a little bit.
We did.
World Order stuck with me after that play for so long, making me think about things and why this happened and why that happened. And I think that is a quality. You know, if a game sticks with you, whether you win or lose, after the play, and you're just trying to calculate what happened and why this happened and why, you know, John over there didn't do well or how he did that one action or whatever it may be. I think the games that stick with you after it's picked up, that is the first quality that makes me think this game has something because it does something different that other games didn't. And I can tell you, Hegemony had the same thing. Terra Mystica had the same thing. Suburbia, Recall. I just played Recall. Same thing. There are some games out there that just make you think a lot about the game after it's put away. And that is one quality that always speaks to me because it tells me that the designer did something different, even if it's a slight difference. They did something different to really spark an interest for
And what game is at the top of that list for you?
me. Oh, that's a good question. Probably the most memorable one for me is Hegemony. My first play of Hegemony took 6+ hours. Like it was an all day thing, right? But I will tell you what, after that game was done, I could not stop thinking about it to the point where the next day, so I own the copy, I taught it and everything. I've set it up solo. I didn't really play a solo game, but I just looked through stuff. I just explored that game, the pieces and how things were moving and why things did. That game intrigued me so much because of the moving pieces and how the card play interacted and how the four different classes worked with each other. And that design to this day blows my mind. It blows
Mm,
my mind that somebody created, well, a team created this type of design,
sure. Yeah.
and that a computer didn't think about this, right? Somebody in their brain thought about this and put those pieces together. You know, and that yeah, hegemony probably is the one that would is always going to stick with me in regards to that question.
Yeah. That's a good choice. Strong game, great design. There is another game that marriages theme and mechanics
Very
beautifully.
much so. Very much.
I mean, I think my listeners are going to get tired of hearing me talk about that marriage, but I love that. Like, I need a theme, but I need the mechanics. And when they are together
Mhm.
perfectly, wow. And Hegemony
Match made in heaven.
really, really sells that. Absolutely. Is there an underrated game designer or game publisher that you can think of that you wished would get more attention in general?
Mm, I mean, one of my favorite games is Clinic, and I know some people know about the game Clinic. I mean, they have 7 expansions out for the game, but I don't think that one gets enough love. You know, it's one guy designing everything and making it all work out. Elvin Bard, I believe, is his name, and he runs his own company and his own publishing, studio and stuff. So Clinic is one of those games. He also did a game called Small Cities that had a reprint a couple years ago, and he has some other stuff under his belt. But like the design for Clinic, I love economics, right? And so you're building a hospital, and the economics behind the game are just incredible.
Mm,
And the fact that they're so modular, you can add this and add that. And now, like I said, with 7 expansions, each one containing multiple modules, you can do so many variations of that game. You can make, you know, I don't even know the number of combinations, but like I would say that that's a very that game is very underrated, and not a lot of people know about him. As far as a publisher goes, back in the day, I was a huge TMG fan. So for those Tasty Metro games, sadly they have closed, but like they had so many good games that not everyone knew about. And I was sad to see them close their doors, but like they had a lot of really strong titles and Spielwork. A lot of
mm,
people in in the US, I will say. I'm sure Germany they know about Spielworks, but
sure.
Spielworks is such a great publisher. They make so many good games. Like like I said, I love political economic. I love Diemocker. Smoky Valley is another really underrated
Yep.
one. And I can go on and on about Spielworks games, but like they make some really cool titles that a lot of people don't know about. Probably because A, they're not all available in the US, and then B, they're economic games. And not everyone they see that dry economic thing and they hard pass. But the thing is, the games are fantastic, and once you get past the word
Hmm,
dry economic,
right.
the game itself is great.
I've forgotten about them. Yeah, completely forgotten. You really brought me back for a minute. Wow. So looking ahead, let's look ahead for a minute. What are you most excited about for 2026? Whether that's a whether that's an event coming up, whether that's a board game that's about to be released, you can take that in any way you like. But anything you're really excited about coming up soon?
I'm excited about Origins. So I used to go every other year, and then I had a kid, and so that kind of put a stop to that for a little bit. So it's been the last time I went to Origins was 2020. They say 2021, I believe,
Okay.
2022, something like that.
Right.
So it's been a couple years. I used to, like I said, go every year, every other year, depending on what was going on. But like I was consistent, and so it's been a while. And so I'm really excited to get there to see everybody. And this is the first time I'll be at Origin as a content creator. So it's going to be a little bit of a different thing, right? To be able to meet people and, kind of get, I'm going to use the term VIP, but it's not really VIP, but you have a
Yeah.
different type of status when you do stuff like this versus just being a regular person. And so it will be kind of cool to experience that because it's kind of like the 15 minutes of fame thing, right? Yeah, we all look at movie stars and think, oh, that's a glamorous life. And then once you get to do it, you're like, this is so cool, even if it's for 15 minutes. And so, like, I get to be on the other side of that fence for a little bit. I think that's going to be a really fun experience.
Mike Stone, the Korean Meeple, an Origins VIP.
That's right. There we go.
That is fantastic, and we will finally meet each other, which will be great,
Yes, we will. Definitely.
and get in at least one game. That's the thing is we always you go to these conventions and you're like, oh, we're gonna game with everybody, and then you're like, oh, you overcommit. I'm the worst. I will admit it. I'm the worst at overcommitting. So I would love to play World Order with you. So we
I
try to
will happily play with you. Happily.
tick tick that off. I want to be taught it. That's going to be fantastic. If somebody were listening right now and were like, I want to start, making content intentionally on my board games. I don't want to just take pictures. I want to do what you do, right? You got any advice for them?
The biggest piece of advice that I've learned throughout my time doing this is that never live by comparison. Don't ever. So we all get into this. And I've done it too. We use other people as our metric for success, and you can't do that because the keeping up with the Joneses, like anything in life, you're never going to catch. And so don't ever use that as a metric for how successful or whatever it is, whatever metric you're using to measure your standard. If you're having fun, if you're enjoying what you're doing, that's what matters. When it becomes a second job or a third job or a fourth job, that's when you got to start reassessing. Don't use other people as a measurement metric.
How am I going to know I'm successful, Mike, if I don't compare myself to you?
You know, that's going to be another thing you have to figure out, though. You know, I've had people talk to me about that, and
Yeah.
I tell them, you know, well, what does success mean to you, though, right? So if like, let's take a real. This is an example I use. I use real world life. I'm like, are you ever going to be as rich as Jeff Bezos? Are you ever going to be, you know, yeah, are you ever going to be Elon Musk? No, no. Are you ever going to be as smart as Einstein? No, no.
Well,
Yes, we can.
you you don't know. I'm just saying.
True, that is true. But you know, like if we continually measure ourselves to things like that, we're never gonna meet expectations.
Yeah.
So figure
Yeah.
out what success truly does mean to you and use that. Because especially when you first start out, the Korean meeple or anyone else, we're the Jeff Bezos of the world, you know? And it's gonna take a long time and a lot of stress to keep up with us and to catch up to us. So don't use me as a metric. Don't use any of us as a metric. Figure out your own metric that doesn't involve keeping up with the Joneses.
Right. Yep. But also recognize that there is some work involved in
100%.
this. I think
100%. This isn't easy.
no, it's not. Because I certainly struggle with this from time to time. As again, I'm human and I tend to compare myself to other people. And I'm like, what does success mean to me? Whenever I start to feel down and depressed because I don't have as many followers as X, Y, and Z, you're absolutely right. What does success mean? At the end of the day, as long as I'm having fun
Yep.
and enjoying this experience, then I won't stop doing it. That being said, there is a little bit of work, right? Trying to
100%.
get people on your show, right? Because my content's very different. This is my content. So trying to get people to not get people to agree, but just trying to get people interested, right? And
Yeah, for
and then
sure.
if they are interested, trying to sync up. I mean, you've been on my schedule for several weeks. I think we
Yes.
had this
Yep.
plan. So there, take that.
But let me ask you a quick question, PJ,
Yeah,
before we close up.
absolutely.
If you hated this, would you stop?
Yes, absolutely.
There you go.
Yeah.
So when you stop having fun and stop enjoying it, that is a great metric for you to tell yourself, I'm done. That's enough.
Yep. And it's okay. It's okay to take a break.
100%. 100%. I just took
Yeah.
a 3-week break myself, actually. And it was fantastic. I didn't have to worry about anything. I didn't have to post anything. And, you know, it really was a good break from all of this, you know. And it's okay to walk away. It's okay to quit too. You know, people are always afraid to quit. And no one's gonna call you a quitter. No one's gonna hold it against you. The only person stopping you is yourself. At the end of the day, you're the only one saying you can't quit.
So
So,
true.
you know, figure that.
At best and at worst, Mike and I are going to be like, hey, I haven't heard from so and so in like 6 months or a year. And right. The other thing for me is I would just say this think about it this way. How many people do you think about on a daily basis, just in the game community, just in our community? But you don't talk to them. You don't send them a message or anything like that. There's somebody out there that's thinking about you as well, right?
Mhm.
And we're all busy. We had this conversation this weekend. I had some folks over, had a little game weekend, and there's just so many of us, right? Trying to keep up with everybody. And I like to check in on everyone, and I try to do it with some regularity, but I mean, come on. I'd
Yeah.
have to quit my job, stop eating, stop sleeping just to send messages and stay up on top
Oh,
of all
100%.
that. So
100%.
But to answer your question, there have been moments where I did hate this. It happened to me last year. I knew I wanted to do the content creator series that I did last year. Uh, I also knew that I was getting burnout. I had promised my wife that I was going to take November and December off for the holidays, no social media of any kind. So I recorded them all in October. And thank God I did, because who knew I was going in the hospital during that time? So,
Right. Exactly.
yeah. So, yeah, there you go. But yeah, so if you hate it, it doesn't mean you have to quit. But if you do quit, that's okay, right?
Exactly.
We all got to do what's best for each other.
But I think hating and like dreading making content is a great metric for you to tell yourself, something's wrong, right? I'm doing what everyone else is doing. I'm trying to keep up with everyone else and everything else, but I hate this.
Yeah.
That would tell me personally that something's wrong and I need to reassess.
Right. That is so true. That is so true. Well, Mike, thank you so very much for your time.
Anytime.
I This has been a real pleasure, and I can't wait to see you at Origins.
Oh, for sure.
Where can people find you on all of the social media things if they want to reach out to you?
Pretty much just my main thing is Instagram. So you can find me at the Korean Meeple. That's where I am on Instagram. I do reviews mainly. I do reviews and other stuff, but I do a deep dive on live series, which I do want to have you on, PJ, sometime. I've had a
Yeah,
lot of
let's.
really cool conversations with people,
Yeah,
and it's an interview style video cast, webcast, if you will. But I love doing those.
yeah,
So for those that aren't familiar with those, I pick a topic and we talk. I pick a specific person. I pick a topic and we deep dive deep into that topic and talk about it. So I love doing that, and it's usually all board game related. Yeah, I definitely will have to have you on one of those
yeah.
coming up. But yeah, just the
Absolutely.
Korean people on Instagram. That's where you can find.
Perfect. Guys, remember, as always, hit the like and subscribe button. Please, comments. We must feed the algorithm and
That's
all
right.
that. But more importantly, feed the algorithm that really matters. Be kind to each other and just play more games.
Exactly.
Well, I hit stop.